Hey YouTube, it's a lazy Sunday morning in England and I better get out of the way in case he kicks my ass. But anyway, I'm revisiting the subject of our favourite cult's bigoted and unrealistic attitude towards homosexuality. Admittedly, the Bible describes gay males as an abomination, and I explained in an earlier video how an ancient struggling tribe may find non-breeders distasteful. Yet now, the governing body concentrate on homosexuality rather than the abominations of eating shellfish or reconciling with your ex-wife, or anything people really like, as seen in Deuteronomy and Luke respectively, amongst many other abominations. But there's a mystery here, because the Bible doesn't directly condemn lesbians, but we're told that Jehovah eradicated everyone in 2 towns because there were some gay men there. We're told that Lot was considered righteous by Jehovah, this being the man that God watched offer his daughters for gang rape, and must have known would later rape his own daughters himself when the townsfolk declined. Why would the biblical writers create such an unlikely scenario as this, then have God destroy those towns, but give a straight sexual deviant an angelic honour guard? On the face of it, it makes no sense. Believe it or not, the indications are that good old-fashioned biblical woman-hating holds the key. I had the privilege of speaking to a learned rabbi for his opinion, and the results quite amazed me. He explained why the gay vexation is directed exclusively at men, and why they don't accept Jesus anyway, but that's another subject. Let me start by saying that I learned that there's a common old Jewish prayer still maintained by some, which runs along the lines of at least not a Gentile nor a woman. I was reminded of 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verses 7. A man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but woman the glory of man. The order in status here is very clear. The sin of homosexuality is not necessarily the sexual act, but that a man is perceived to perform the role reserved for the biblically weaker vessel. Of course, male transvestism is also an abomination, with no mention of women that do the same. Again, this is about the man shaming God and lowering himself. The reason Jehovah firebombed those towns yet saved the pervert Lot was because the townsfolk were, in quotes, debasing each other, and were going to relegate the visiting angels to the lowly status of a Middle Eastern Bronze Age Jewish woman. Lot, however, was righteous, because despite his obvious criminal sexual sickness, he didn't forget the, in quotes, correct status of a woman, even applying it to his own flesh and blood. His willingness to abuse women close to his heart was why he was considered righteous, in the same way Abraham was for being willing to execute his son, and the same with Jephthah with his daughter, which is an aside that Jehovah's Witnesses distort away from the truth. The sin of Sodom and Gomorrah may have been that they had more equality between the sexes than Bronze Age Jewish tradition agreed with, rather than the sex between consenting adults. As we know, it's always the victor that writes the story, allowing the defeated to be defamed, and in the Bible there are several examples of that, which I don't have time for now. I was pointed to Judges 18:27 to 29 to give support to the idea of blameless people being cleansed at God's instruction. The Bible itself describes the people of Laish as being peaceful and secure, yet God approved as they killed all the peaceful people and burnt the town to the ground before taking the land. So how does this relate to Jehovah's Witnesses today? The Jehovah's Witness cult continue the biblical disregard of women and children. Any sane person that heard the apostate talk uploaded by Snarker would be incensed by their casual dismissal of the suffering of children. Any sane person would be incensed by the incest of Lot and the child killers Abraham and Jephthah, men with no natural affection and the parenting skills of cockroaches. Yet Jehovah loved them and encouraged these criminally psychotic monsters. And our cult leaders emulate this immoral aspect of Bible fable. From reading the text, it's blind obedience that Jehovah rewards, regardless of the price to humans and the madness it leads to. It is clear this cult follows that awful example. In this day and age, with the freedoms that women have fought long and hard for, and in the United Kingdom died under the King's horse for, women sit in the Kingdom Hall with heads metaphorically bowed, supporting this nonsense and the oppression of those of a different sexuality. When they have so much in common, they choose to support this hierarchy of oppression for the benefit of abusive, controlling others. But before witnesses talk of women being honoured and respected inside the cult, I would like you to consider that women are respected in the same way that Muslims protect and honour their women, with their legal testimony considered as less than that of a man. Remember, the only difference between witnesses and Muslims today is that Christian theocratic control was forced by the Reformation to adapt itself to secular expectation and common sense. Aside from that, witnesses and Muslims would be virtually inseparable. Today humans are maturing. There is no reason for gay people or women to be oppressed, treated as inferior, and denied human rights in any institution, especially when those that benefit use their privilege to defend and protect abusers, as evidenced by the Snelker video and the Watchtower defence of Candice Conti's attacker, and many other out-of-court settlements with gag orders that our cult paid for. But before I go, do you think Jesus was having a laugh when he said at Matthew 19:12, there are those that make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake, obviously encouraging that practice, but then at Deuteronomy 23 verse 1 says that any man that isn't entirely intact in the trouser department can't get in? Is that Jesus' sense of humour?